Okay, hello and welcome to the next video. We'll talk a bit more about the logic behind functions, and we'll be borrowing a bit from the example code from the geospatial session here. So we start off by just getting some peaks from Munich, and I already tested this code. It's just to have some data to play with. So let's have a brief look at this data. Okay, it's again, of course, multiple data frames nested beneath, so like we want the OSM points. So this. And let's say, so this is just the number of peaks, okay. Let's maybe say now we want to compare the number of peaks in Munich and in Berchtesgaden. So one way of doing this is that we already have the list of Munich peaks, so we can just get the number of rows, so 19. And now we want to get the same for Berchtesgaden. So of course one way would be to just copy this, Berchtesgaden peaks, but usually whenever you start copying code, it's already a sign that maybe you want to write a function actually. But let's, whoops. Oh, I can't find Berchtesgaden, that's a bit annoying. Okay, so we have to briefly play around with the bounding box. Berchtesgaden can't be found, maybe Bayerisch Zell. Just to have some mountainous area. Okay, perfect. And again, normally when you do like a more proper analysis, you should at least verify whether this bounding box is correct. I'll just go for it now, because it is a very unique name, and also we really don't care about the data here right now. So we can also run this one, then copy this as well. And it's nice, but it's of course a bit inefficient. You see, like already we have lots of lines of code here, and much better would actually be, so we can have, let's maybe call this one bad and good, is that once we start using code twice, it's usually a sign that we want to rather work with a function. So then the way to go here would be to abstract this away. So maybe get peaks, we create a function, and then we just wrap our code. So we add the brackets, one at the front, one at the end. We have to adjust indentation, and then here we can just put place instead of Munich. And you see, it's actually not that much work to change this. So this was really fast. And then what we can do is just call get peaks Munich, get peaks, oops, Bayerisch Zell. This should have actually been called Bayerisch Zell. Let's actually change that, because wrong variable names, it's always a bad sign. You should always change these. And this also makes it much easier. So let's say, for example, now I can do this. Wait, no. So this way, and this is then Munich. Okay, and you see already, like, it's significantly less code. Or at least a bit less code, but especially nice it gets when you now. So this is usually where it's like it kind of breaks even in terms of effort, but where you start really saving time is now when you want to make changes, of course, and almost always you will. So for this one, for example, maybe we want to make this a bit nicer, and we take the result, because always you have to add this OSM points. So we just write instead return result OSM points. And before I didn't have a return here, because of course always the last thing in every function gets returned. But in general, it's nicer to, there we're going towards code style, to use an explicit return. It's just a bit clearer then. So now we just had like minimal change, but this means that we can actually skip these OSM points. So that what you can do then just now to get the number of peaks is to just use nrow. And same for this one. And it's much, like it does the same things, but it's just much cleaner. And in the long run, this will really make a big difference. Like it really, all these minor changes really add up. So almost always it's worth it. Even if you just have like an analysis script where you do some pre-processing, just write functions. And if it's like within an R Markdown, you don't need to perfectly document these usually, just for yourself. But once you get a bit more complicated, I would also recommend documenting them. And we'll talk about this in class, how to best like and explicitly document your functions. And then the only other thing is that, I mean, having all these in like one R Markdown is usually okay to a certain degree, as long as you have simple functions with like maybe just 5 rows or something. Once you get like more complicated, I mean, there's functions with like 20, 30 rows, right? You don't want to have all these in like just one file. So what you would start to do then is, you can just create a, I originally wanted to use London Marathon Daily. That's why this is called marathon.rmd. You can create a folder, and typically this is just called R. So this is a convention, and also for some things like packages, you actually need to do this with this convention. You need to comply. And then you could also move your functions into different R files. So for example, maybe you would want to call this get data or something, right? Because we're kind of downloading the data here and probably want to have some other functions that are related to it. Then we could just move this out of here into this. Just gonna get rid of this. And you already see how clean this will get, right? Like we just have this one function, get peaks. It's super neat. And then we just need like one call to source. And this is just to evaluate our functions. So this is just whenever this will be called, it will just, not functions, sorry, files. It will just get this file and run it. And what we can do then, let me restart the session. So this way we get rid of all our previous state. And it's like we opened this for the first time. So I run this get data. Oh, I also of course need the requirements. You can actually even do the same, but we'll do this in a sec. And there we go. Now we just have the function available, does these things, and of course we end up with much less code in our notebook. It's much cleaner now. We could even do something like, and this is a bit of a, you don't have to do this, but you can if you feel like it. Something like this, packages. And then here we just have, for example, the library calls. And again, having these packages, it only makes sense for analyses. If you have an actual more complicated R package or something, R packages have their own way of loading packages. So yeah, perfect. So there you do it differently. And then now we actually end up with this such a small and clean file and kind of move away some of the complexity into separate files. And of course, here it's like all pretty chill, but I mean, if you have like a full-on big project, this really makes a major difference. Yeah, and especially this is nice, of course, because what this also allows is having these outside of the marathon file, right? So far, we've always been working in a one RMD file, but usually actually, once you have more complicated projects, you might also want to have multiple RMDs. And then you just create another RMD, you just copy this one cell, and you have access to all the same code. So it really, usually it's, if anything, minimal extra effort, if even. Usually it's the same amount of work to do these things. And then in the long run, they can really pay off big time. Yeah, so that's it regarding functions. And I'll see you in person. Looking forward to the next session.